Hey, everybody. I wanted to go on and show a quick introduction of the pace sheets for those of you that have been following along and using the pace sheets to help you cash more tickets. Or if you're brand new, welcome aboard. But I wanted to take some time and I wanted to show some examples and I wanted to show a rundown of how you really read the information and what you should be looking at. So let me start with a race from this past week. I want to be able to go through and explain what each pieces of that are of information that is actually on the pace sheets. So let's start, and I'm going to cover race 8. I believe this is from Sunday. When you look at the race, are relevant over on the left hand side. And when you look at it, you can see that you've got your race information. You can see that there'll be a term, there'll be a D for dirt or T for turf. Here's the class level. So this example, it's an allowance, 85,000. And then you get the distance. And in this race scenario, it's 1 mile. So from a pace standpoint, you also get what the projected pace is based off how many front runners are in the race there are. So this race actually projects fast. And then the other piece of this is if you look at the top left corner, you'll see that these are the speed points. So in this race example, there's 25 speed points. And there's a reference key on the website. If you go to www.pacesheets.com, you will find a reference tool on that information. Typically, what happens is if your pace gets over 21, that's where it starts to shift to some of the back speed. Obviously, the higher the better. That's where you can get some late speed horses that typically if the front collapses type of situation. So there's 3 different pace scenarios. Scenario number 1 is no pace, where you don't really have any early speed, typically tends to favors closers. The second scenario is you have a average honest pace. The third scenario is you have a fast pace, like the example in this race. And then the fourth example is when the pace gets hotter, it will notify you here that the pace is hot. And that typically, that's where you can find some prices with some of the back speed horses if the race is set up for them. Now, obviously, that comes into play even more so on the turf. So back to the number in the top left. Again, those are the speed points. And then this little number that's down below it, this is an indicator of how many one-dimensional early speed horses are in the race. Typically, if you see a 1 there, you have to watch out for that horse to determine, is it going to be lone speed? Could it get comfortable on the front end? Could it go wire to wire? And that's one of the indicators right there is you'll see a 1. When you see a 2, typically it's 2 early speed horses. Obviously, the better of the 2 typically wins that. Now, when you start talking 3 or more early pace horses, that's where typically you can, again, capture maybe a better price, find some value with some of the back speed horses. So the big chart here is a pace visual, and it gives you 2 things. So on the left-hand side is your early pace. So when you look at early pace, go from the bottom to the top. The best early pace horses, when you look at this, they're going to be at the top of the pace visual. So in this race example, it's the 4. Then what you have is you have total pace, and I'll show you in a minute what's over on the other side. But your best horses are going to be over here. So hypothetically, you'd like to see horses in this quadrant, and those are where you're going to find, and it's not always going to be value horses, but I'll talk about that in a second. But you're going to find some horses that you can commit to, especially if there's a big gap, because that's what I'm looking for here is I'm looking to see what the gaps are. The last thing I just wanted to mention about the pace visual box, which is your largest box, and you look at the size of the circles, that is all based off algorithms. You're looking at the connections, you're looking at, is the horse in form, you're looking at, maybe there's a jockey change. Maybe the horse is very successful at that certain distance, whatever the case may be. Some of those other things that you would look at from an angle standpoint, that's where the bigger circles come in. So obviously in this race, it looks like the 4 and it looks like the 2 are your biggest bubbles when you look at this. So the other piece to this is it actually breaks it down on the right hand side. The total pace again is indicated right here. The better side is to the right side. Just think of a horse race and how in the direction the horses run. It breaks it down here so you can look at it closely, but it's really the same information that when you go and you look at this right to left, remember, same direction as a horse race. We're going that way. And when you look at it, the 4 is the best on total pace, followed by the 1, which is exactly what it shows down here on this piece. Early speed, we already talked about. So from the bottom up, the 4 has the best early speed. It's quite a significant gap. And then on late speed, believe it or not, the 4 actually wins on that piece too. It's a nice example of being able to go back and say, okay, I can see this as an early pace, total pace, and see where the horses stand. And then also look at the total pace on the other side, where it actually breaks it down and you can see exactly how do the horses compare when you're looking at it, because we all know that early speed wins a majority of the races, but you'll be surprised this total pace, how many times this is a really good factor for determining what are they going to be the end results of a horse race. The last thing I have here is late speed. And again, late speed, what you may want to see, and sometimes you can find value, is even if you have a favorite that may be pretty close, you may be able to take another horse down below that may have the best late speed. And what you'll find out a lot of times, those horses are the ones that finish underneath in an exacta, trifecta, whatever that bet may be. But that's another good way to play it. So, and then lastly, when you go down to the bottom and you look at the information down at the bottom, there's a few things here. So obviously you've got information on the saddle cloth numbers, horse's name. You got your morning lines here. This is very valuable information for me. The pace type of the horse, but you got sires, you got jockey information, you got who the trainer is, and this is a new ad, and I'm going to be adding more stuff as we go forward. But the form piece of it, there's a few things you want to look at. What you see in this number in parentheses is the number of days between from the last race to today's race. So you'll see all the horses in this race are pretty much in form. They've all raced fairly recently. And then there's a couple other things you want to look for. So when you see 2 underneath it or afterwards, or you see a 3, that means it's the second off a layoff, and the 3 means third off a layoff, which is typically in the cycle of horse racing. Those horses can continue to improve and get better off that long layoff. The other thing that you got to look for, and it's not shown in this race, is you got to look for the asterisk. And one of the things that is so important, typically horses that are not informed do not win horse races. What's handy with that information is sometimes you can look amongst the field and figure out who's in form, but the asterisk actually points out something that actually it's another algorithm that shows that based on the last race, maybe it's comparing it to the race before, based on the distance, that horse looks like it's going to be in form. So again, more information to look at. And when you make any decisions on handicapping. So that's really the information in a nutshell. Pretty simple. And that's the goal here, is not to complicate things. Keep it really simple so everybody can see what they have. So let's just take a look at a couple other races to go back to Saratoga a little bit, because that's where we spent a lot of time. Now, there's a few great examples of showing all about determining sometimes, do you have the winner or how do you catch the winner? We all know how important that is. But I love this example of this race. And this is the Flower Bowl Grade 2 at Saratoga. If you remember, Warlike Goddess and There was a couple contenders, and when you looked at this was my point. Warlike Goddess was, I think, 2 to 5. Warlike Goddess deserved to be the favorite, no doubt about it. But one thing that got called out here is, does Warlike Goddess look like a 2 to 5 horse compared to the rest of the field? I don't think so. Because when you look at it, didn't have actually the best total pace. Actually, the 3 and the 7. And if I remember, the 7 was a lightly raced horse, had some good figures, but it probably was a little bit outclassed in this race. But the pick that I made was with the 3. I liked what I saw in the PPs, and when you compared it to this information, the 3 actually had better early speed, which the late speed goes to the 4 Warlike Goddess. But what I want to call out is, what's the running style of Warlike Goddess? Warlike Goddess is a closer. Closers need pace to run into. The pace here was honest. So you weren't going to get a fired up front end. And it didn't look like there was going to be a lot of pressure on the 3 Virginia Joy. So if you wanted to take a shot against beating Warlike Goddess, who everybody had in their pick whatever ticket, you probably wanted to take a shot with the 3, and you maybe even wanted to take a shot on the 7, considering it was 20 to 1, that maybe that was the opportunity there. But the point being here is, validate, does the horse look like it should be the favorite, or can you validate that a favorite could probably be beaten? Take you to another one. I want to look at the 4-star Dave. So when you look at the 4-star Dave and you see the results here, so very small field. We had to deal with a lot of that at Saratoga, but you look at the early speed piece of it, the 5. You look at the total pace part of it, it's the 1. It was a nice, it wasn't much of a gap, but the 1 certainly had an advantage over the 2 and the 3. So when you look at it, the 1 on the total pace side looked pretty good. When you just said the 5's got a pretty good early pace. The interesting part is there was only one early speed horse. That was the 5. If he was any decent, you could have taken a shot on him to maybe be lone speed and go wire to wire. But the race here indicated that the 1, Casa Creed, was probably the best of the class here. So second best on total pace was the 3. Notice the different pace styles too. This is a presser. This is a versatile horse. So the race ended up being 1, 3, 4, 5. Let's look at, I think I had a couple more. Here's another good one from the Forgo. One of my favorite horses, Jackie's Warrior. And when you look at Jackie's Warrior, Jackie's Warrior is a great horse. Jackie's Warrior, deservedly so, was the favorite. The point being here is Jackie's Warrior is the 3. I also want to call out that the 7 had very competitive early speed numbers to the 3, and was probably the one that was going to run with the 3 when you look at the information. Total pace-wise, pretty close between the 5 actually had the best total pace, Jackie's Warrior, and then the 7. What happened here in this race? Well, Jackie's Warrior got pushed a little bit on the front end, and the 5, which was Cody's Wish, ended up winning the race. So the best of the late speed was the best of the total pace. Again, it's 3 to 4 to 1 that horse was. But if you had have gotten that one over Jackie's Warrior, who everybody probably had singled in the pick 4s, the pick 5s, the pick 6s, this would have been a good shot, because that you're getting a lot of value here based on the fact that Jackie's Warrior was such a favorite. But again, when you compare it to other horses here, Jackie's Warrior is not jumping off the page when you're looking at it. So again, this is why you've got a handicap. Here's another one here that I'll share. This is another race from Kentucky Downs 2 weeks ago. Same thing. The 4 horse, look how it stands out, the 4 horse. And this is Some Like It Hot Brown. Kind of fit the bill. You'll notice that you've got that 1 up in the corner, lone speed. 4 is the best total pace. 4 is the best early speed, and actually 4 has some really good late kicks. So um, the 4, Some Like It Hot Brown, won that race, and I thought on paper really was a standout, and I could validate that it looked like a really good horse, even though the pace was fast. If you got lone speed, they get on the front end. Um, Sometimes they can just carry that speed and put the rest of the field away. So those gave you some really good examples of some races that have happened recently where the pace sheets have been able to show that that horse is legit. You could find some value, you could find some favorites that maybe are vulnerable, and that's the goal of utilizing the pace sheets to pick more winners. So if you go over to pacesheets.com, first off, from the side of, if you want to learn more, there is a fantastic visual guide that's on there. And all you have to do is click download PDF. You can download it, you can read it, you can follow along the races that we've had out there, the future races that we post, and utilize it to help you pick more winners. And that's the goal here. And then, when you go to the home screen, again, it's pretty easy to get into the store. You'll see that, whatever we have posted here, you'll find that all the products are right there. You can just simply click on it, um, download it, save it, go back, review it, and again, utilize it to improve on your picks. Some really good stuff. I'd encourage everybody to go through the site. You've got a lot of all our prior shows on spot plays are all on here. You can go back. There's some great examples here on some of the shows that we went through some certain cards. The Travers Day card that's on here is a great example. We went through in detail a lot of the pay sheets and exactly what they reflected and why we made the selections that we made. So hopefully you found this video helpful. I hope if anybody has any questions whatsoever, don't be afraid. Send your questions. You can DM us on Twitter at PaceSheets1, or you can send us an email on right here on the PaceSheets, www.pacesheets.com. So that's our tutorial. We look forward to adding more stuff, more information, cleaning the information up even more as we go forward. But we're really excited about what we have here and the ability to, again, it's not about getting overwhelmed with data. We thank you for your support, and we hope you cash more tickets in the future.